What if someone told you that there's a secret ingredient to personal and professional growth that we often overlook? Would you believe it? Welcome to the world of feedback, an essential element that has the power to transform our lives in ways we often underestimate. Let's dive into the heart of this topic and uncover its true potential. Feedback, in its simplest form, is the sharing of observations, concerns, and suggestions. It's a channel for communication that provides insights into our strengths, areas for improvement, and even the blind spots we may not see ourselves. However, feedback often gets a bad rap. We've all been there, right? That sinking feeling when our boss says, "Can I give you some feedback?" Or the anxiety that builds up when we have to provide feedback to a colleague. It's often misconstrued as criticism, leading to a negative perception. But what if we changed our perspective? What if we saw feedback not as an attack, but as a gift? When delivered and received correctly, feedback can be a powerful tool for growth and improvement. It's like a mirror, reflecting our actions and behaviors back to us, giving us a chance to see ourselves from another's perspective. It's an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to improve. Imagine you're driving on a highway. Feedback is like the GPS guiding you, showing you the best route, and helping you avoid roadblocks. Without it, you're essentially driving blind. But here's the catch. For feedback to work, it must be based on trust and respect. It's not about pointing fingers or blaming others. It's about fostering a culture of open communication, where everyone feels safe to share their thoughts and ideas. And that's where the real magic happens. When people feel safe to give and receive feedback, they become more engaged, more productive, and more likely to strive for excellence. Imagine a world where everyone is open to feedback, where growth is inevitable, where continuous improvement is the norm. That's the power of a feedback culture. You might be thinking, that sounds great in theory, but how does it work in real life? Well, let's dive into some real-life case studies. Our first case study takes us to the bustling heart of Silicon Valley, where we find a tech startup named Innovate Now. A few years back, Innovate Now was just another company struggling with high employee turnover and low morale. The management, in a bold move, decided to implement a feedback culture. They started with anonymous surveys, moved on to open forums, and eventually incorporated regular one-on-one feedback sessions. The impact was nothing short of remarkable. Employee satisfaction soared, productivity increased, and the company began to retain their top talents. Notably, Innovate Now went from struggling to survive to becoming a leading innovator in their industry, all thanks to the power of feedback. Now, let's shift gears and look at a personal transformation story. Meet Jane, a young professional working in a corporate setting. Jane was a hard worker, but she always felt like she was running in circles, not making any significant progress in her career. Then, she discovered the power of feedback. She began to actively seek feedback, not just from her superiors, but also from her peers and subordinates. She listened, she learned, she improved. Today, Jane is a successful manager leading a team of 20. She attributes her success to the feedback culture she embraced, allowing her to identify her strengths and work on her weaknesses. Our final case study brings us to Harmony Healthcare, a mid-sized healthcare provider. They were facing a crisis of patient dissatisfaction. The management, recognizing the need for change, decided to implement a feedback culture. They started collecting feedback from patients, employees, and even their suppliers. They then used this feedback to improve their services and operations. The results were astounding. Patient satisfaction increased, employee morale improved, and Harmony Healthcare became a model for other healthcare providers. These stories are more than just anecdotes. They are real-life examples of the transformative power of feedback. They show us that feedback isn't just about pointing out mistakes or shortcomings. It's about growth, improvement, and success. It's about creating a safe space where people can express their thoughts, share their ideas, and contribute to a collective vision. It's important to remember that feedback isn't always easy to give or receive. It requires courage, openness, and a willingness to change. But as these case studies show, the rewards are well worth the effort. And remember, these are not just isolated incidents. They are testament to the transformative power of feedback if we dare to embrace it. So, how do we create a feedback culture? How do we turn this theory into practice? Let's dive into the practical steps to building a feedback culture. It's not just about throwing around words like constructive criticism and open dialogue. It's about creating a safe space where feedback is welcomed and not feared. First things first, we have to make sure that everyone understands what feedback really is. It's not a personal attack or an opportunity to lay blame. It's about sharing insights to spur growth and improvement. So, let's start by defining feedback clearly and communicating its purpose and value to everyone involved. Next, let's talk about creating that safe space. This isn't about physical safety, but rather emotional safety. It's about fostering an environment where people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas, where they know they won't be shot down or punished for speaking up. It's about ensuring that everyone feels heard and valued. But how do we actually go about creating this environment? It starts with leadership. Leaders set the tone for the entire organization. If leaders are open to feedback and actively seek it out, it sends a strong message that feedback is valued. Leaders need to model the behavior they want to see by giving and receiving feedback in a respectful and constructive manner. But it's not enough for leaders to just talk the talk. They need to walk the walk. This means setting up systems and processes that encourage feedback. This could be as simple as regular team meetings where feedback is encouraged, or more formal mechanisms like 360-degree feedback systems. Encouraging feedback is only half the battle, though. Once feedback is given, it needs to be acted upon. Feedback without action is like a car without fuel. It's not going anywhere. So leaders need to follow through on feedback, taking steps to address issues and improve. This shows that feedback is not just lip service, but a core part of how the organization operates. And lastly, we need to ensure that feedback is a two-way street. It's not just about leaders receiving feedback from their teams, but also about leaders giving feedback to their teams. This helps to build trust and rapport and shows that everyone is in this together, working towards shared goals. Above all, building a feedback culture is about fostering a sense of openness and trust. It's about recognizing that everyone has something valuable to contribute and that we all have room to grow and improve. Building a feedback culture is not an overnight process. It requires commitment, patience, and most importantly, a willingness to grow. So let's start today and see where this journey takes us. So what are the key takeaways from today's discussion? How can you start building a feedback culture today? Well, let's recap. We began by understanding the power of feedback. It's a two-way street, a dialogue that allows for growth, learning, and improvement. Feedback is not a critique, but a compass that guides us towards becoming better versions of ourselves. It's a catalyst, sparking innovation and nurturing a culture of continuous improvement. We then dived into a few real-life case studies where we saw the transformative impact of a feedback culture. From small startups to large corporations, we saw how feedback can build trust, foster collaboration, and drive progress. These organizations did not shy away from feedback. Instead, they embraced it, creating an environment where everyone felt safe to express their thoughts and ideas. So how can you foster such a culture? It begins with openness. Encourage open dialogue. Ensure everyone feels safe to express their thoughts and valuing perspectives. It's about creating a safe space where constructive feedback is welcomed, not dreaded. Next, lead by example. As a leader, demonstrate that you value feedback by actively seeking it and acting on it. Show your team that feedback is not a threat, but an opportunity for growth and improvement. And remember, feedback should be timely, specific, and constructive. It's not about pointing fingers or laying blame. It's about identifying opportunities for improvement and working together to achieve them. Lastly, make feedback a regular part of your routine. Whether it's through one-on-one meetings, team retrospectives, or anonymous surveys, find a method that works best for your team and stick to it. Regular feedback fosters a culture of continuous learning and improvement. Remember, feedback is not something to fear. It's a tool for growth, a catalyst for continuous improvement. Embrace it and watch as you and those around you flourish.